Good morning to those of you out there on the West Coast. Good afternoon to those of you here on the East Coast. I've been doing hundreds of these trainings, and it's funny. I feel like every single time I say good morning and good afternoon, I'm looking outside to remind myself it's sunny day or what kind of day it is. Sunny days, it is. It always puts me in a good mood. And today we're going to be talking about time management. And I like the idea of time management on how I can get more done in a shorter amount of time and really feel like I'm getting a lot accomplished. So before we get started, I'd like to give a tip to say thank you to those of you early and on time, which I really appreciate. Thank you for doing that. Thank you for engaging. My tip for you today is the way I wrote it down. And if you haven't seen me talk about this before, I keep something called a joke book. And it's not literally jokes, but it's my way of writing down things that I want to remember. So comedians, I learned this from Jerry Seinfeld. They used to write down jokes. All of the great comedians do it. They write down jokes. And then they, especially the ones that went well, so they can keep working it into their system. And for me, I do the same thing when I hear good ideas. And so the one I want to share with you today is, you don't learn, then start. You start, then learn. You don't learn, then start. You start, then learn. And I really like this, this whole concept. And my tip for you is to just keep it in mind. At some point, you got to get out of the learning mode and into the doing mode. I'm teaching you stuff today. Today, I'm going to give you very actionable tips. At the end, I'm going to say, hey, go do this. And so you're in learning mode for the 30 minutes we're here together. And then you go dive into doing the task that I just taught you. If you already know the task, then I'm just kind of reminding you that it needs to be done. But if it's being taught today, then it's going to have an actionable step forward. And this is a way that you can start and then learn. You're learning from your experience as you go along. So hopefully you find that tip helpful. I'm going to get started. Let me just get my tech in a row and we'll dive into today's training. And again, today's training is time management for government contractors. In particular, we're going to be talking about time management for busy small business government contractors. This is a big deal to me, right? Small businesses, we do everything. And it doesn't matter whether you're a small business owner or somebody working in a small business. My favorite line, obviously, if you look at a small business owner, you go, yeah, I know they're busy. I know they do everything. They run the company, they do sales, they do all these kind of things. But even if a person is in a company, a small business, and your role is business developer, I've heard people talk about this, and it's one of my favorite ways to hear them describe stuff. And I say it back to them to make sure they realize how much they're doing. And I say, well, what's your role within your company? And they say, I'm a business developer. Okay, perfect. So what does that mean? That means you're out researching and understanding the agency. You're developing relationships and hearing about and bringing opportunities back into the pipeline. Do you do anything else? Oh yeah, then I do capture. Okay, so then you're shaping that opportunity. You're working with the acquisition shop and you're working with the program office to shape that acquisition in your company's favor. And then you throw it over to the wall, the proposal. Nah, we're kind of shorthanded, so I write on the proposals too. Okay, so then you're the proposal manager, proposal writer, graphic person, the pricing person. As they continue to move forward, they do all this activity. And that's just a person with the job business developer. In a large prime, they don't have two roles. They have skills. Many of the people who work for large primes could shift to role because they're aware of the roles, but they're given one role and that's their job. They're the program manager or the technical writer or the capture manager, right? There's all these different roles, but in small businesses, you're so busy. And I want to give you a time management set of information and skill sets that will allow you to feel like you're getting stuff done instead of feeling like you're overwhelmed and you have so much on your shoulder, right? You can definitely feel like you accomplish stuff daily if you make that your priority. I want to make a priority for me to feel like I've accomplished something today and then live the rest of my busy day after that. The last tip I want to start with here is just mentioning that you can take control of your day, of your time, of the things you get done if you take responsibility. I teach that we need to take responsibility in order to gain control. Responsibility is not blame. I'm not saying take blame, oh, it's all my fault. I'm saying I take responsibility for my day, for my schedule. I don't give responsibility or put responsibility on my customers, on my boss, on my staff. I don't put the responsibility on them on whether my day is being managed and my time is being managed effectively. I'm taking responsibility. And when I take responsibility, now I'm in control. If I give responsibility to my customers, like my day is hectic because my customers, well, I've given them responsibility for controlling my day. And so I pretty much can check out of having any kind of control over my day because I'm saying somebody else has that control. I want you to remember that you should take responsibility for everything that matters to you, right? But in this case, time management, take responsibility for it, and then you will control it. You will inform others how you manage their time, your time, and how they fit into that schedule. And so just keep that mindset idea in your head about taking responsibility gives you control. And one of the ways you're going to take responsibility is the three things I'm going to talk about today, right? The first is just understanding this time management matrix. This comes from Stephen Covey, but understanding that there's 4 quadrants of type of information or type of work that you do, and you want to focus a lot of your energy on just one quadrant. So I'll talk about the time management matrix that a lot of us follow. The second thing I want to talk about is understanding the 80-20 rule, or the way I wrote it here, because I'm a Lord of the Rings fan, the one thing to rule all things. Understanding what is the one thing? What's the most important thing to you today, this week, this month, this year, right? Do you understand what that is? If we go in not understanding that, then we'll be working at a lot of stuff. I call that constructive procrastination, instead of working on the one thing that matters to us. And I'll describe that. And the third thing we're going to cover down on today, and the part I want you to walk away with to do something, is these 5 tasks that you can do every single morning. And when you do these tasks, it'll take 2 hours or less to get them done, and you will get a massive amount of work done in your day without feeling pressured. So that's what I'm going to cover down there. If you don't know who I am, my name is Neil McDonald. I'm the president of the GovCon Chamber of Commerce, and I want to welcome you to my daily federal sales training, where I provide tips for success in the federal market. I spent 20 years as a small business owner in the federal market, and since 2018, I've been teaching people like you that government contracting is not a secret. It's a process. When we follow a process A to Z, or in this case, research to sales, we're going to have repeatable, predictable results. And that's what I want for you. If you're looking at my screen, you can see that I've taught the process, and I've refined the process for federal government success down into 7 steps. Researching your customer, the agency, right? Targeting means identifying the people you can reach out to, and outreach is picking up the phone and calling folks. And that leads to strategic relationships, will help you learn about slam dunk opportunities that fit for your company so that you can write winning proposals and start winning more sales. And that's what I want for you. That's why we have this 7-step process here. One thing before we get started in further into today's training, make sure people who are here and people who come after the live training, make sure they know who you are. Put your company name, your core competency into the chat. I especially want to thank those of you, not just who showed up early, but like 10 people, I think, already put their information and good mornings into the chat. That is because we are a community. I'm just doing the training, right? You are building the community. I'm enabling the community to be built, but reach out to each other. You see people in this training. Everybody who's in my training is open to connecting on LinkedIn. If they're not going to come here, right? So reach out to them and say, hey, I saw you on Neil's LinkedIn training. I'd love to connect, see if there's any synergy. At the very least, help each other when we can. But that means don't just put in the chat that you're open to connections. Reach out to people and say, hey, John, hey, Devin, love to connect with you. Okay, so let's dive in. I got a lot going on, and I tend to try to put a lot of content in. First thing I want to mention about the time management matrix is that I did an entire 30-minute training, which was way too short of time, an entire 30-minute training on this one slide, on this idea of the time management matrix. I don't know if you're able to see me in my little corner video, but Stephen Covey wrote this book, 7 Habits for Highly Effective People, that I've been reading since back in the Army days. And that book is easily in my top 3, if not my top 1 recommended business book and life book. It is such a great book. But inside the 7 Habits for Highly Effective People, he describes the time management matrix. And I'm going to go pretty quickly on it today because I really want to save time for those 5 steps at the end. And so you can go watch my other training to dive deeper into this. But the biggest thing you really want to pay attention to about our time every single day is that whatever we're working on, whatever comes onto our plate and onto our desk, falls into one of 4 quadrants. Quadrant 1 is the upper left, and that's important tasks, and they're urgent as well. And I'll come back in a second. Quadrant 2 is not urgent, but important. That's my favorite quadrant. That's where we want to live. Quadrant 3 in the bottom left is, these are things that are not important at all, and they're urgent, which is crazy, right? And then quadrant 4, not important and not urgent. right? So think of too much Netflix binging there. So let's come back for 1 second to quadrant one. Some examples of something that might be important and it's urgent and you just can't avoid it. I put down crisis or a pressing problem. The customer's pushing you. Maybe you got a proposal that's due out, and because we didn't do proper planning the whole time before, we're rushed down to the wire. That's important. It must be done, and it's urgent. It needs to be done now. That's quadrant one. We try to minimize what we do there by implementing systems that allow us to focus our energy much more in quadrant two, the important, but not urgent. So strategy development, business development, capture, all that stuff you can see in here. Proposal development, early long-range proposal development, relationship building, right? Process improvement, looking at your company when you're not under the gun and there's no fires going on and go, what can we do to improve our company? Process improvement. That is important and not urgent. And so as you go through, I'm not going to go through quadrant 2 or 3 and 4 as much, but really not important and urgent is the phone ringing, right? Ignore the phone. Let every phone call go to voicemail. Unless you're a help desk that has to answer it, the rest of us let it go to voicemail and then just get back on a timely manner. But that way you don't sit there and answer the phone while you're in the middle of a project and doing something. Quadrant 4 is really literally looking at every email or just scrolling through Facebook. Even LinkedIn is a waste of time sometimes if all you're doing is scrolling so you don't do what you need to be doing. And then one of the biggest ones I want to get you out of on quadrant 4 is sometimes we get overly obsessed with research and analysis, right? We call it paralysis analysis or paralysis by analysis or analysis paralysis. This idea that rather than go do activity that we need to do, we will do research and keep learning. This is why I meant in the beginning when I gave that tip, start, then learn. Don't spend forever learning, then start. I got some advice over here on the right-hand side. You can dive into it, but I want to keep moving forward. I have this as a handout. If you're in the Sustaining Members membership program, you can go get this handout already. This whole training that I'm doing today, I'm going to actually turn it into like a mini course or something that allows me to expand on the topic. But the biggest thing I want to just have you take as a takeaway is when you're looking at quadrant 2, at the end of this training, I'm going to give you 5 things to do every morning. That's quadrant 2. And it's really important to focus on what is important and not urgent, and you'll be able to control your day. So let's talk about this next thing is this idea of the one thing, working on the most important thing. And so I titled this slide, The One Thing and the 80-20 Rule, because they fit together. The one thing comes from a book called The One Thing, The Surprisingly Simple Truth Behind Extraordinary Results, right? By 2 gentlemen, Guy Keller and Jay Papasan. This book is awesome. And it was funny. I was recently reading some reviews and somebody said, there's too many antidotes or something. I'm like, first off, I love antidotes. Second, it doesn't matter because if they took the entire book and put it into one sentence, that would have been enough. And I'm going to talk to you about that in a minute. But before I do, and diving into this one thing, the most important, I want you to understand the 80-20 rule, this idea of 80% of your success comes from 20% of your effort. The 80-20 rule just is going back and forth like that. 80% of your headaches come from 20% of your employees, or 80% of your headaches come from 20% of your customers, right? 80% of the great work you do comes from 20% of your employees. To think that everybody's in that same, and by the way, 80-20, you can shift those numbers around to fit the reality, but 80-20 is the good rule because it's basically saying focus on the 20% and you'll get the 80%. Another way of looking at this is that 80% of your revenue is going to come from 20% of your customers. And so when I say that, I'm looking at this from multiple angles. For example, end of the year spending here in FY 2023, there's a huge chunk of dollars, billion plus, that's going to be spent in the fourth quarter as direct awards to 8A small businesses. When you look at who is spending that money through direct awards at the end of the year, the bulk of it, roughly 80%, is the Army. And I've done a whole training before. Actually, I don't know if you're an 8A firm and saw me put out this postcard, but I put out this postcard to tell people, look, the Army's end of the year spending or sole source was $2.2 billion. And when you look at DOJ, which is another big department, $181 million. So $2.2 billion compared to 181 billion in the same time to 8As, not like buying tanks or something, to 8A small businesses. And it's the same thing for you. When you look at your customers, and let's say you're in 5 different agencies, I bet you can begin to look at them and say 80% of our revenue is coming from 20%, one of those 5 agencies. Or you could look at those 5 agencies and say 80% of our revenue potentially can come from one. And what I mean by that is some agencies have far smaller budget, and so they can't really spend as much with you compared to like the Army or the Navy or some of these other ones who have a much larger budget. And so as you determine your agencies or your customers, keep that in mind as well. 80% of your revenue comes from 20% of your customers. So build tightly into those 20% so that you can grow that 80%. And the same thing is the activities, right? 80% of your results in the day, and this is where I'm going to lead into the one thing, these come from the 20% of the activity you do. The 5 things I'm going to give you are literally going to be 80% of what you could be doing in a day. 20% of what you do in a day, but will give you 80% plus of the results of your day. That's the whole idea of those 5 things I want to teach you at the end of the training. But I want you to look at your own day and go, what am I working on, right? What are the 20% activities or tasks that I can get done that will lead to 80% result, whether it's in my company as a whole, whether it is on business development or capture or even proposal, right? If I look at the proposal, what if I went to the board right now and just mapped out the whole solutioning, how it might look? Forget about paper and computers, just on a whiteboard. If I did that exercise, I could move forward. That 20% exercise might take me 30 minutes, but now I have 80% of the vision of how I'm going to approach this proposal I'm going to write, the solutioning behind it. And so as you look at your day, you always want to be making sure you're working on things like that. So that moves me down to the one thing, right? And I talked about the one thing, the surprisingly simple thing or truth behind extraordinary results. The idea is, in this question that comes in here, right? What is the one thing I can do today that when complete will make everything else easier or unnecessary? So the question we want to ask ourselves, whether it's today, this week, this month, this year being a bigger project or bigger initiative, ask yourself, what's the one thing I can do this week that if I do it, it will make everything else easier or even unnecessary? I put down as an example, starting a new strategic relationship. If this week I started a new strategic relationship with Booz Allen, let's say, and I get in with Booz Allen and I'm meeting with a senior person who's responsible for sales within the Army, and I say, I want to go into the Army. Well, then it makes everything else easier. I will be able to hear about opportunities. I'll be brought onto their team. I might not have to write as many proposals from a prime position because I can subcontract, still make money, still get in. It might even make things unnecessary, like having to make cold calls into the Army, because maybe together with my relationship with Booz Allen and potentially getting on contracts in the Army, that I don't need to do cold calls. They'll just walk me inside the wire and start introducing me to people. That's the value of a strategic relationship. That's what I teach you the value of a strategic relationship is. And so if I do that one thing, build a new strategic relationship with somebody who can really move it forward, it will make a lot of my activity easier, if not unnecessary, right? And that's what I want you to ask yourself as you're looking at something you're doing today, this week, this month. If you look at the next 2 months here going into the end of the fiscal year, what's one thing you could do that would make everything else easier or unnecessary? And here's one tip that I hadn't thought about, but it's perfect, is one thing you could do really fast and stay up the next 48 hours until you get it done. You don't need sleep. Go in and register in every supplier portal that is in our supplier portal directory. And you'll see in a second, I wonder if I got it. Here you go. So if you go to resources on our website, there's a free download, right? You just got to put your email address in so we can send it to you, basically. But a free download of 100 supplier portals, some with federal agencies, some with large primes. If you go in and register your business in there and make it easier for buyers to find you, you are now making life so much easier, potentially, for them to be able to find you and work with you. And you definitely reduce the amount of door knocking you have to do, because now maybe they'll knock on your door. That's an example of one thing that you could do right now in the next few days that will make your entire end of the year activity easier and position you to go into FY 2024. As long as I'm on this slide, I just want to mention also that we downloaded uploaded, made available the July version of the Small Business Specialist directory. This is a directory of large primes and of federal agencies. In fact, one of the cool things is because we put it out there and thousands are downloading it, we're getting edits. And so we've got edits that we're doing live right now on this. But we also have new companies coming in who are large primes saying, hey, you don't have us in there. Can we get ourselves in there so that way smalls can find us? We're like, absolutely. And that's why we like putting this stuff out there, making it available so that you and they can find each other. We like being the catalyst, but we look for you to have your own success. So one last thing here is if you've got any questions as you go forward about government contracting, come over 24/7. You can ask us a question. We'll answer it at our convenience, generally within the 24-hour kind of frame, but ask us any question. I've been asked really incredibly tough questions that I don't know anything about, but I'm able to point them in the right direction. I'm like, look, you need to talk with Molly. She's the expert. She'll take care of it. Things like tax exemption. I don't really know anything about that. If you do, contact me. All right, so go check out our website. Let's wrap this up by talking about the first 5 tasks I believe everybody in a small business should be doing each day who's responsible for business development. So clearly the owners and any of the leaders, anybody responsible for sales like business development, capture, proposal people, whatever those titles are. If you're in a small business, you're generally part of the big sales pool there, if you will. And so I want to recommend these 5 tasks that you do each day. And if you do them, it'll take less than 2 hours. The way I lined it up, it'll take 1 hour and 15 minutes, but I put 45-minute buffer in there just in case you're drinking coffee and you get a second cup or whatever, right? But budget 2 hours for this, and you'll be doing a massive amount of work for sales. And then you leave 6 hours roughly of your day to deal with all the other activity you might have. So the first task is engage on LinkedIn. And what I mean by this is you want to go in and find any of your target customers. Let's say I'm trying to target the Navy and in particular PEO Digital. I want to know all the people who are related to PEO Digital, and every morning go in and quickly see if they've done anything that I can engage with. Have they posted something recently? Have they commented on somebody else's post? Wherever my customer or my target relationship is engaging out there and being active on social media, especially in LinkedIn, then I want to engage with them, even if I'm just observing what they've done so I'm aware of it, or giving it a thumbs up or providing a comment. There's different versions of LinkedIn that you can use that make this easier. I've also done training on how to do this on a really easy method. But the idea is to do that with your target agency customers. Also do this with your strategic partners. Get into your strategic partners' company page, into the people's personal profiles. I mentioned earlier, let's say I want to work with Booz Allen and in the Army. Well, I might be tracking them on social media and trying to see what they're putting out. When I engage with them on LinkedIn in that way, they're aware of me. I'm building that relationship. I'm strengthening it. But every single day, and I just time block it by 15 minutes. I say I'm spending 15 minutes on LinkedIn, and then I'll come back the next day. If I've got 20 people and I only get through 10, that's fine. The next day I'll look at the next 10 and then just keep rotating, right? Over here on the right, by the way, I put you must protect your schedule because it's taking responsibility gives you control. You need to let people know at the beginning of your day, I'm not available because this is blocked out every day for me to work on Quadrant II, right? And you just let people know I'm not available. And I don't care if you're an employee and you got a boss, talk to your boss and say, hey, I want to do this so that I can do the best work for you. So stay out of my hair. But if you softly explain to them what you are doing, they're going to stay out of your hair. They're going to let you sit there and drive in the direction you're doing. So you want to block this time out at the beginning of the day. Don't do it casually. You plan your day at the end of the day. You plan the next day. And so when you come in, you should just be ready to sit down and do these things. So first one, engage on LinkedIn. Second one, call 10 new people. Most people, you're just going to leave a voicemail, right? You're going to call up, say, hey, Jane, I'm just calling. I want to introduce myself, my company. I was hoping to get a few minutes of your time to have an introduction call. I'm going to follow this up with an email. And so you just call 10 people a day. I have here a bullet that says, these are people coming from your target list. If you remember the 7-step process that I showed you earlier, step 2 is targeting. And targeting is about building a list of 100 or 200 people that you want to reach out to. You always want to have that list ready. So every day you can call 10 people from that list, right? And so you're just reaching out to them. 10 people every single day adds up to, I don't know, roughly 1,250 people, I think it is. Somebody did the math for me on business days, but basically you're going to be reaching out, calling a lot of people. That's 15 minutes a day, though. In order to leave a voicemail, it's 30 minutes. So think about 30 seconds, not 30 minutes, 30 seconds to leave a voicemail. So that's 5 minutes. Plus you have a little stagger time in there, but you'll be able to get going. That even accommodates if you get somebody on the phone, because if you accidentally get them on the phone, lucky, you still want to get off the phone as fast as you can. Hey, sorry, I wasn't prepared to talk now. Can we schedule time? Perfect. Let me get on your calendar and let me get away. Number 3, review sources sought on SAM in particular, right? SAM.gov, I said this the other day, there's like 900 sources sought out there right now. One of the best ways to get into the agency of your choice is to write responses to sources sought that fit in your core competency, your slam dunk opportunities. So every day, don't wait for alerts and other stuff. Go in there and look at it. Those alert things that come is you abdicating responsibility to the system that is sending you alerts. But instead, if you go to SAM, you can say, show me every sources sought in the last 24 hours, since I just looked at them 24 hours ago. There's not going to be that many, and you quickly scroll through them. You can try to filter them out by keyword, and you can try to filter them out by NAICS. Why? What if you accidentally miss one that represents millions of dollars in revenue? It's better to just scroll through 25 or 50 sources sought. It'll take you a split second to pass things like construction if you're IT, right? But you want to look at SAM. You have a saved search in SAM that you just activate it. It shows you the last sources sought, and you can scroll through it. Same thing if you have a contract vehicle, right? If you have a contract vehicle, you want to be tracking on the sources sought. Of course, you want to do stuff with RFPs, but that's different. Here, I just want to make sure every day you're making sure you're looking wherever sources sought are that match what your company sells, so that you don't miss any and you take advantage of trying to respond to your target customer. Number 4 is just responding. Take 15 minutes. Respond to the people who are calling you back from yesterday, who, those are the new people you reached out to. They're also Quadrant II people. That means strategic relationships or key customers. Don't respond to every email and every phone call at the beginning of the day. The beginning of the day, look in and go, who's the most important ones? And respond to those. And number 5, last one, is increase your target list. Spend 15 minutes. Remember, I said have a target list of 100 or 200 people. That list should always stay fresh, right? You're calling people, so they're coming off the list. You want to keep adding to that list. And I recommend just add 10 new people a day. 5, 10's fine, but 10 people a day allows you to match the number that you're calling each time. And one thing I would recommend as you're finding these people is keep your 15 minutes focused to a particular task. So if you're trying to find people in FPDS, only look in FPDS for 15 minutes, only in SAM, only on the web, only in LinkedIn, right? Only do one source a day, and it makes it really easy for you to maximize the efficiency of the time spent. Here's what I want you to remember from today's training. First off, the replay is available immediately. So, if it's going too fast, just go watch it again. But really the big one is I want you to focus your activity and your energy on Quadrant II tasks. In particular, do those in the morning so that right from the very beginning of the day, you have a sense of accomplishment. You could go home after 2 hours and go, I got a ton done, right? Know your one thing, right? You don't have to have a necessarily one thing every day, but certainly you should have a one thing this week. What would move us forward? What would move our company forward? And so know that. Read that book, 7 Habits for Highly Effective People. Read the book, The One Thing, in order to understand those. And again, I said this earlier, but go. Here's a task for you. Start with the sources sought reviews. Go to SAM, set up a saved search. So starting tomorrow, you can come in and see what was done in the last 24 hours. That way you can track on it. Remember this, we do training every single day, every single business day. And so come back to our training tomorrow. You can go to my profile and see the full list. Somebody might put in the chat what tomorrow's training is. But I do want you to remember that if you're getting value out of this, this training comes from the generosity of our sustaining members. So please consider becoming a sustaining member. Not only are they generous to be able to help bring us here, but there's thousands of dollars worth of value in the sustaining membership. And people say this in the chat every single day, the value they get out of the membership. So consider that. If you're interested in working with me, feel free to reach out. We tend to work with companies that are 2 million plus. I don't really like taking the money from people who are below that. I want to know that you're going to be able to sit there and succeed and potentially get revenue. And so if that's you, feel free to reach out, talk to us. And for everybody, for all of us, we just need to remember government contracting, it is not a secret. It's just a process. I'll see you in the next training.